Though she has lived around the world thanks to her father's military career, Sarah is no stranger to the East Coast. In her teens, she landed here in Virginia, where her military family was able to put down roots. She attended Virginia Tech, majoring in journalism and public relations, and when technical and writing and doing PR for a chemical company left her soul hungry, which I totally understand, she entered the MFA program at Old Dominion University, and that's where she wrote The Time It Snowed in Puerto Rico. We're thrilled to have Sarah here back on the East Coast for the Gaithersburg Book Festival. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for coming out. I'm going to adjust this because I know when the music starts playing over there, it can get a little rowdy. So I'm going to, can you hear me better? Okay. Thank you for coming out, and that was such a lovely introduction. I have to thank everyone at the book festival because they have done nothing but welcome me with open arms and be the most warm, wonderful people I have ever met. So I don't think he's around, but he'll see this later. To Judd Ashman, he just did a fantastic job, and Carolyn Crosby. They contacted me all the way in El Paso, and they said, come, it'll be so much fun. And I said, I know, I'm from Northern Virginia. In May, I'll come. I think, twist my arm, I'll be there. So, and the festival is amazing. I look around and I am astounded. I've been to a bunch of fairs in this Fairfax, where I grew up in Fairfax and in this area, and I'm like, how? This is so uplifting to me, a big book nerd, that all these people from the community have come out, and there is no rainbow spinner, there is no gravitron, there is no kind of merry-go-round or, ices everywhere. It is just books. We're just here for book love, and there's nothing better than that. So this is my perfect kind of festival fair. I'm here today, all the way from El Paso, as Gail said, to talk about my latest novel. It's called The Baker's Daughter, and she just gave you a little background on it, and I'll do another quick recap. It's ultimately about two very strong women who are worlds and generations apart, and yet they are both living in a time of war. Elsie Schmidt is a baker, and Reba Adams is a young reporter in El Paso, Texas. For a local magazine, Reba is assigned to interview the elderly Elsie at her bakery, and she goes there, and during that time, she is doing her job and asking questions, which are bringing up a lot of dark, horrific memories from World War II, when she was a girl in Nazi Germany. And at the same time, she's turning the tables on Reba, and she's questioning Reba on why she won't commit to her fiance, who is a Border Patrol agent in El Paso, Texas. So those are the two storylines that alternate back and forth, and that was a quick little summary so we can get on with it. But two more perspectives that are important that I haven't talked about at any of my readings across the country so much are the men. There are two perspectives, and that is Ricky, who is the Border Patrol agent, and he is the fiance, as I said, of Reba. And then there is Joseph, who is a Nazi officer, and he is the affianced of Elsie. So those are two men, and we get limited perspectives from them, but they are there. I think each of them has about 4 perspectives. And I bring that up because the biggest question I get asked at all my readings is, what made you pair El Paso and Germany, right? I know y'all are thinking that, right? People in here are thinking, why those two? And every time I have to stop and say, I didn't have a mastermind plan to weave together these two settings and have some sort of subliminal message inside of it. Some more scholarly authors, perhaps, would have that agenda in mind. And I didn't. I start with character. I'm simply a storyteller. I listen a lot. I think probably too much. Actually, as a child, my mother's in the front row, by the way, so we can all turn it. When I was a child, my mother and quite a few teachers used to tell me that I had my head in the clouds. I know if there's some other writers in here, they probably heard that too. And I'm not sure that I ever grew out of that, but I grew up with that. So that head in the clouds, imagining things, kind of grew up from that into my stories. I'm not political. I'm going to put that out there now at the beginning because and I know that could be a sin in this town. I understand that, but I'm going to say it. I'm not political. My parents, I grew up here, like I said, in Northern Virginia, and my parents and friends for years have tried to get me to pin on blue or red, and I just have mixed around so much that I'm probably as purple as they come because there's just back and forth. I vote by election, by candidate, by issues that mean something to me. Literacy, education, health, things like that. I go full force into things that I believe are fundamentally essential to all communities, whether you're in the United States or Timbuktu or anywhere. So I say that, I specifically say that here because I know it's a DC Metro crowd, A. B, I'm well aware that The Baker's Daughter touches on an issue that is pretty hot right now on our national agenda, and that is illegal immigration. Half of the book is set in El Paso, Texas, on the border. El Paso is considered a sister city with Juarez, which is Mexico right there. So we are literally, I look out my backyard, my parents are astounded. I look out my backyard and there's Mexico. I mean, literally, it is Mexico. So that all is in the story. But I have to make it extremely clear that there's no comparison between World War II, Nazi Germany, and present day America. That's not what this book is about. The similarity is only this. It is that Elsie Schmidt is a young woman growing up in a time when our country is at war. Reba Adams today is a young woman in a time when our country is at war. They are forced to make these really difficult, ambiguous decisions about their life and about what's going on around them, and they're difficult. But the novel is about people, and it's about history, and it's about wartime. It is not about politics. It's a story. It is absolutely not an agenda. So again, I bring that up here because I know it's a DC Metro crowd, and I know that politics is just always kind of lingering on the surface, even when I come home to my family, and this issue is in the book, and I do talk about it. Do I have any military in the audience? Yeah? Awesome. And any more? I mean, don't be afraid. Raise your hand. Men? No military? Military back there? Okay, I actually have... Are you a spouse dependent or you're both? You're retired military. Fantastic. I have to give major kudos and thanks to all my military readers, to the service they do for us, for what you have served for your country and your countrymen and the nation. I just have to stop and say thank you. And I actually have something for you. I have a little thank you just for me. It's nothing big. But for this woman right here, and there's a man back here, and there was one more. There was a military over here. She's going to find you and hunt you down. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you so much. Sir back there, thank you so much for your service. All that being said, I'll give you the background on why I have such a heart for this. I live in El Paso, Texas. My husband is an Army officer there. Gail pointed that out. I'm the daughter of a career 30-year, he's in the audience, I won't look at him. A career Army officer, retired. He retired in Northern Virginia, and he was the son of a Vietnam vet. My mother is the daughter of a Korean vet who is also in the audience right now. So my brother is in the Army, and he was stationed in Iraq for a tour. So all that being said, you might think, oh, she knows war, or she knows the military, or she knows soldiering. I don't, even though I have all that background. What I know is I know Elsie and Reba's stories. I know what it's like to hope and wonder and pray and fear and be terrified of that thing you don't know, because it's your brother, your loved one, your friend, your neighbor, something, your father who's off away in war. So I know their worlds. I know Elsie, how she feels. I know how Reba feels living day to day when something's going on. Fort Bliss is in El Paso. I'm not sure who's familiar with that. So we have a lot of soldiers just walking around. So that's kind of, that's where my heart is. And when I wrote these two women's stories, I wrote them not for any political position or anything of that nature. I wrote them to get that fear on the page and to say, what would happen if you were in this position and you had to make these choices? What would you do? And again, you're rooting for your team, right? You're rooting for your men because they are your men and your women, and you love them. And losing the battle, that means they might not come home. So you might not even be behind or for, even know what the political agenda is behind the war that's going on or behind the soldiers, but they are your countrymen. They're your neighbors. And so you want them to win, to come home. And that is something that I had to recalibrate my mind and my imagination and think about the Germans, right? They were their countrymen. They were Nazis. How did that all factor in when this is your son, this is your husband, you want them to win so they come home? And a lot of, there was a lot of Germans who absolutely supported the Nazis. The Germans elected Hitler. We forget that sometimes in our history books, that they elected Hitler. So then when things started going south and he became a dictator and frightful, and he was terrorizing his own people, there was a degree of guilt. We elected this guy, and now we're terrified of him, and he's doing these things that we might not agree with, but if we speak up, what's going to happen to our family? We just saw our neighbor, the Jewish contingent, that were hauled off, and that could happen to us and my family, my brother, my son, my business could be taken away. So I went in and I tried to just dig into that aspect because I hadn't read anything about that perspective before. And right now, on the flip side, on the present day storyline, I currently live in El Paso, as I said, and there's a battle being waged on the border there that I don't think the rest of the country is acutely familiar with. We're familiar, we hear about it, but I don't think it's as raw as as I see it. And I'm not from El Paso. I moved there 4 years ago. So I think that's why I was able to see it and then write this book. And I started writing this book within the first 2 months of living there because it was all so shocking to me. I mean, it was like, it's as if, well, now I come back and I look out and I go, oh my God, it's so green. Like, look, there's green everywhere because I just came from the desert. And I think when I went out to the desert, to El Paso, that's what I felt like with people. Oh my gosh. Oh, the neighbors 3 doors down they're not all legally here? Really? Oh yeah, that's normal. Really? I was just kind of affronted by this, and that went into the book. That went into my writing, into the storytelling. Also, at the time, I was teaching at the University of Texas at El Paso, and that was a really eye-opening experience because one of my prompts that I give to all my students, it's just a staple prompt, is what was the most fearful experience you've had and why? It's a writing prompt for English writing students, typically first or second years. And then they write an essay and they turn it in. And I did it, I taught at Old Dominion University, and I done it with them, and it's, typically good stuff, but okay. And this blew my mind. It was story after story of someone's own family or a loved one that was hidden in a car for like 3 days without a bathroom or water, or someone came to their house and they had an illegal aunt there, or just a story, dozens across my desk. And I pulled my husband and I said, we have never spoken about this in class. This is not a discussion I had with them. I didn't say, tell me your immigration story. Nothing. This was, what was your most fearful experience and why? And it infused me. I had to write about it. I couldn't not write about it and ignore those voices, those real voices. So those also went into the present day story that Reba tells. And it was absolutely directly influenced by those. I've kind of talked a whole way around. So now back to that original question, why El Paso and Germany? And sadly, after all that, I don't have a concrete answer to give. It's simply a story that was, I think, begging to be told by someone. And I just happened to be the writer at the right place at the right time. And the right place and the right time for me was I went to the farmer's market. El Paso has like everywhere else, a weekly farmer's market. And there was a German woman there selling German bread. And I grew up in Germany a little bit. My husband speaks fluent German. He lived there. He's a military son of a career army man too. And so I thought I'll bring home some brochin and make my life easier. He'll love me. I won't have to bake. It'll be fabulous. So I went up, bought some brochin, and her accent was so thick that I knew that she was first generation. And she was in her 80s, and I just thought, whoa, El Paso, Texas. That's an adventure. How did she come all the way over here? I mean, it's not like here in D.C. where if they came across. This is like Wild West. So I asked her, how'd you come to be in El Paso? And she said, I married an American soldier and I moved here after the war. Only words she ever spoke to me. Never asked her any more questions. I didn't grill her. I didn't interview her. I went back to try to find her, like stalking a little bit. And she wasn't there. I never found her again. I honestly now look back and it's like an apparition almost. It gives me chills. Just now I got chills because it's like this angel person was right there when I needed to hear this story. And I heard it. And thank God I had my ears open and my heart open. Because if I'd been in a hurry trying to get home, got to get this bread, let's go, I would have missed it. But in that moment that she said that, it just was, it was like a tuning fork, Boing. And all of a sudden I was walking home in a daze and I was just thinking, wow, what chutzpah, to be honest, to do that, to come all this way and to marry an American after the war, which means she was a teenager in Nazi Germany. Her family must have been peeved for her then to marry an American and then say, bye-bye, I'm leaving, going all the way over. I mean, I couldn't stop thinking about her. And that day I went home and I wrote in my journal, and that was in 2007. And I started making bulleted points about her and who she was and what I thought and how could she have, and she started to bloom. So that's where that bloomed from. And then Reba bloomed from my students. I mean, she came directly from my students' stories and just what they were seeing at the time. So that's a lot about that. And yes, there's a lot of research that went into this. And some people want to hear all about the research, and I'm so happy to talk about that in Q&A. But I talk about characters because I'm a girl who loves her characters. When you start writing in 2007 and it comes out in 2012, you live with these people in your head. Just a little creepy, I understand. But in your head for years. And I need to know what makes them tick, what makes them sad, what makes them angry, what scares them. That was the biggest thing. What makes you so fearful that you might turn off your moral compass because you're afraid and you want to protect yourself. Again, 2 women, what are they doing in a time of war? How are they reacting to that? So all that, I've talked a lot, and now I'm going to read. So that way you get a little bit of this. And I see a whole bunch of familiar faces who have come out to my readings here in Maryland and in Arlington and some different areas that I've been to here. So I'm actually reading something new. Typically we go on these book tours and we read the same thing over and over, but I decided for everyone that might be here who had been to some of my other readings, I would read something new today. And it goes along with what we just discussed about military and about making hard decisions and that. So I hope it pertains directly to it. And it's one of the 4 chapters from one of the male perspectives. It's from Joseph, the Nazi. And when I write, yes, I take on my characters. So these were, my husband can attest, he's not here, but he would tell you, these were dark days when I wrote these chapters, trying to get into the psyche of what would make someone do this and turn this way. But this is chapter 10, and it's in Munich, Germany, and it's on Kristallnacht, which I'll let you all go look up, but it was a big night there. November 9th, 1938. Second Lieutenant Joseph Hoob stood on the doorstep with a holstered gun and a heavy sledgehammer. The three comrades in his charge eagerly awaited his command to carry out Gestapo orders, but the 23-year-old lieutenant paused, unsure of himself and the power of his hand against the marred door. The yellow star gave no counsel. To use the brass knocker stained and painted with a U of Juden seemed inappropriate for the occasion. "Should we break the windows first?" asked Peter Abend, a 19-year-old graduate of the Hitler Youth. The ranks were full of soldiers like Peter, boys just out of lederhosen shorts who converged in the cities from the German countryside, determined to demonstrate absolute devotion to the Reich. Naive stories of war glories filled their heads, rifles their hands, and their lives were suddenly imprinted with a new purpose that transcended hayseeds and pig corrals. None of them had studied at the university. All were students of one school of thinking and one course of action. "Nine," said Joseph. He pounded the sledgehammer to the door. "Open." Nothing. "Open or we must come by force." Silence. It was time. His orders were clear. He wore the uniform, trained in the ranks, fell in line and step at the grand parade for Führer Hitler. It was time to act the part, despite all reservations and all personal convictions. The individual should come to realize that his own ego is of no importance in comparison with the existence of the nation. Those were Hitler's words. The unity of the nation, pure Germany. He reluctantly blew his whistle, and the three young soldiers charged the familiar door. The oak held at first, but then cracked and split the frame. A woman yelped inside. "We are here by order of the Third Reich for Herr Hochschild," said Joseph. The family huddled in the dark hallway. Frau Hochschild stood strong at her husband's side, 4 children behind them. The 3 girls cried, "Papa," and the youngest, a 4-year-old boy, valiantly held his father's hand. Herr Hochschild stepped forward. "I have committed no crime." "You are a Jew. Your very nature is offensive," said Peter. "Quiet," said Joseph. Peter hushed, but he cocked his gun audibly. The 2 soldiers at his side followed suit. Joseph moved in front of their barrels. "Herr Hochschild, please come with us, and there will be no harm to your family. On my word." He could carry out these orders without barbaric measures. He was an officer of the Third Reich and had read Mein Kampf. He understood that one could influence the individual and group by way of rhetoric more than any other force on the planet. These soldier boys in his command knew nothing but target practice and military games. "Make this easy on your children, Herr. Come." He gestured to the door. Herr Hochschild stepped closer, out of the shadows. "Joseph?" he asked. "Is that you?" Joseph angled his head so that the lip of his cap darkened his brow. "It is. Joseph, you know me." And he did. Herr Hochschild had been his literary professor. He had taught courses at the University of Munich, where Joseph had studied for a semester. That was before the Jewish professors were dismissed and the SS had recruited him. Those years ago, he'd come to this very home for supper and had been welcomed by Frau Hochschild, an almond-eyed, cheerful woman who said she always wore emeralds to complement her dark hair. She wore none now. All Jewish jewelry had been impounded to finance the new order, though some, he knew, bobbed on the ears of his commander's wives. The girls had been young, the last he saw them, babies cared for by a stern Austrian nurse who disapproved of children's eating sweets. Joseph had learned that quickly when he presented sacks of rainbow gummy bears to the rambunctious brood, and she promptly seized them. Huddled in the hallway, they stared at him now with hollowed cheeks. The house had been different then, too, effulgently lit by electric lamps that made the wallpaper flowers seem to grow right off the boards. It had reminded him of his mother's herb garden in summer. Now the paper blooms were torn and singed around the wires. The hallway smelled of mold and smoke. This had been a joyful place, and he couldn't help but wince at the familiarity of Herr Hochschild's voice, the same voice that discussed Goethe and Brecht with him and read Novalis and Karl May over plummy wine by the fire. For a moment, he wished he could close his eyes and return to that simpler time. "I can't leave my family," Hochschild pleaded. He reached out to Joseph. "Don't come any closer," Peter warned. "You must do as I say," said Joseph. Please don't do this, begged Herr Hochschild. We have orders. The two men came to either side of Hochschild, their guns aimed at his back. You are our friend, cried Frau Hochschild. You traitor? She raced forward to slap Joseph. Peter fired. I'm going to stop there. So you can read the rest, but that's just a little... Thank you. Thank you so much. That's a chapter from the inside. I usually read the prologue, but I thought I'd give some of my old friend faces in here a taste of the internal. So that's chapter 10. This is my favorite part, actually, of the whole readings is being able to talk to you now and have you ask anything you want. And I swear I will answer anything minus what kind of deodorant I wear. Anything else, you can ask. So, any questions? Questions? Don't be afraid, I don't bite. Okay.
Well, I find it interesting. You're obviously not Jewish.
No.
And writing about the Holocaust, which is such an emotionally laden topic for those of us who are.
Yeah.
How did you feel? Wasn't that a huge ordeal for you to know it well enough to be able to explain it and be there?
This was a lot of research, first off. I read a whole bunch of books that I thought were wonderful and captured the spirit too. Sarah's Key was phenomenal, and Tatiana de Rosnay has become a good friend of mine, and she has such a heart, and she gave me good advice to, don't hold back the emotion. Let the story pull that emotion in, because it deserves it, and the material deserved so much thought and process and heart, and that's the reason it took me from 2007 to 2012 to come out with this book, because my heart broke. I don't know who in here has read, but there's a little boy in the book named Tobias, and he was just a Jewish boy, and he was like the son I don't have. I mean, I just loved him so much, and I think that my heart broke with him and broke for the Jewish community, and it did. It was a lot. It took a lot out of me, and it was a lot of research, and I wanted to do it justice, so I took my time. I didn't try to let's get a book out a year. I wanted to think about this one because it's so vastly different from my first book, which is a coming-of-age story set in Puerto Rico, told from the first person of a 11-year-old girl coming of age. That sound anything like what I just read? No, yeah. Completely different story, different viewpoint, different voice. Stuart Onan was just up here a little while ago, and I don't know if anyone was in here listening to him, but he made a comment that I was spot on Stewie, even though I probably shouldn't call him that. But he said every work is different. It's a different style, a different animal. You change voices. You don't want to have the same spice on the same chicken. Is that what he said? Same spice on the same chicken. You want to change it up. And I said, yes. Oh, I love you, Stewie. Because that's exactly how I feel about my work, is that first book is so vastly different from this one. And my next one coming out is a contemporary story set in kind of this area. Oh, yeah. So very different, though. Very, very different. I don't know how I got on the topic of it. See, I just start talking, and it's like we're at tea, we're having our Starbucks, and do you any more questions? There's a lot of people in here, which I love, but no questions? Oh, another one. Go ahead.
I asked him a question, always intrigues me. When you read reviews of your writing, how do they affect you?
As so many authors have said that I've listened to today, we try not to read reviews. We really, really try, because, at least me, I care about every reader so deeply. I mean, I really do. I met these two ladies, these readers, and they saw my name tag, and we were in line for the bathroom, and they said, "We're coming to you." And I said, "Fantastic, now we're friends." So I feel I connect with my readers, so it means a lot to me that to have someone write something who read my book and maybe has a problem with an area, that I feel so deeply, oh, really? No, that's not, but you can't be there at every page to say, I don't know what. You have to let your book go out and stand on its own. So I try not to read reviews. And then you just remember and think, oh, when you get good ones and, oh, fabulous, lovely. And then, but I try not to read either or. I just would rather meet you all in person and have a conversation. And that means more to me than reading the reviews. Any more questions? Oh, Matt.
What's your writing process like?
My writing process. I'm a hermit. My family's here. They can attest. Like, I really am a recluse. And so when I go into, this is my kind of my public person, but when I'm in creative mode and creating new stories, I shut down. I mean, I'm in my writing office. I am there from early morning, like, 9 or whatever. I double bag my tea. I'm, got the caffeine going, and I write. I stop. I usually eat lunch at my desk, and then I write until my husband gets home. And fortunately and unfortunately for me, my husband is in the medical field, so he has very long hours. So he gets home late, and then when he gets home, I stop, and then it's his time, because I think that keeping that balance of family in your writing life is so essential. Otherwise, you'll lose yourself in your characters. And you'll lose yourself in the process. So my husband keeps me sane, and when he gets home, we hang out together, we watch crazy TV, we catch up on our day and laugh and walk the dog. So that's really important to have that balance. So otherwise, I write, and that's during the creative process, though. As you know, this is Madeline Miller up front, who I love, and she wrote a fabulous book called Song of Achilles, little plug there. So she, when I'm in the post mode, when it's revision or when it's publicity or doing the other things, the promo, the long leads for magazines and newspapers that come your way from your publisher, totally different side of the brain. It's a little more analytical. I get up, I get down, I do emails, I go, I run errands, I do radio shows in between. So I write other nonfiction articles for newspapers, magazines, whatever is needed. So that's a totally different, I've been in that world for the past 5 months now, 5 months since the book came out, I think. January 24th is when it came out. So since then, I've just been touring and on the road and doing everything else. But when I get back this summer, I have to finish that novel I mentioned, and then it'll be shut down. Me in my room doing the gritty hard work. So good question, though. Any more questions? I think, I got the 5 minutes, 8 minutes ago or something crazy. I'm sorry. So, we just quickly? Okay, go ahead. My mother is an elementary school teacher.
And taught the writing process and they never wanted to plan. That was the hardest thing with 4th and 5th graders, to write a plan for whatever they were writing.
Yeah.
And some of their favorite writers, I would say, Judy Blume does not write without a plan. So
I have a plan. Yeah.
I figure. So you plan first, right?
I do. I have bulleted scenes of what might be my chapter outline, but they might not. The characters absolutely drive my writing. So once I sit down at my laptop, I journal in a actual journal. People don't handwrite anymore, I feel like, but yes, I still handwrite, and then I get to my laptop. And when I start actual typing of the story, that's when sometimes they deviate from that plan. But there is a plan. I need a roadmap to know where I'm going. And then the characters can go where they want, and they have. I mean, that chapter I just read from, not supposed to be there, not supposed to go that way. Right there where I stopped and Peter fired. No! That's what I was saying as I'm typing. Don't do it! Don't fire! Take it back! No! And he's fired. Peter fired. It's black and white. It's on the page. And then you see what happens afterwards, and I hope you all pick up my book. I know I'm out of time, but there are copies over in the tent, and I'll be signing, and feel free to contact me. I love getting in touch with readers online, so I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter. My website is my name, www.sarahmccoy.com, and you can contact me, and I Skype. I love Skyping with book clubs from El Paso, and you'll get to see my puppy then, because I bring him into the Skype video. So thank you all so much for coming out. Lovely crowd. Wonderful.